Let's make an easy sourdough sandwich loaf. All right, so you're just gonna need a food scale, a bowl. I prefer metal for sourdough. So you're gonna put your bowl on your scale, and then you turn it on so that it zeroes out. Okay, so this recipe will make 2 loaves of sandwich bread. You're going to need 650 grams of water. Okay. And then you'll need your sourdough starter. And I believe it is, yes, 200 grams of your sourdough starter. And then I like to go ahead and mix before I add any flour. I feel like it makes the process a little bit easier. I usually make 4 loaves at a time, but today we're just going to do 2. I feel like it's a little bit easier to work with if you're a beginner. This is a really easy recipe, easy to make a bunch in advance, and we like to just stick it in the freezer. Okay. Next thing you're going to do is grab your flour. You can use an all-purpose flour. You can use a bread flour. I'm really not that picky. I don't see a huge difference when I do it either way. So we're going to do 1,000 grams. I know, it feels like a lot. I'm gonna take it off the scale. It always makes me nervous when I try to mix on the scale. So you're just gonna mix that together really well. 20 grams of salt. We use sea salt, but just use whatever salt that you like to use. I like to add that after I've incorporated some of the flour. And I mean, you can keep on mixing like this. But I actually find that it works out really well if I do a good knead at the very beginning instead of waiting until the first stretch and fold. So I'm just gonna knead this together. Looking good, looking good. A little shaggy, a little formed. Okay. And I forgot to grab my towel. But we are just going to cover this up and we're going to set a timer for 30 minutes. And then we're going to come back and do our first stretch and fold. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. Let's see how this is looking. Right, this is where we're at. We're going to do our first stretch and fold. One of the things that you can do is add a little bit of flour. Keep your hands from sticking, but you can also get your hands super wet if you're worried about the dough sticking to your hands. Okay, so just kind of stretch this bad boy, spin, stretch it out. Okay, it's not nearly as complicated as it might seem. Even keeping a sourdough starter, we'll do a video on that as well. So I just come in here and you just bring out your inner child. You're like playing with Play-Doh, essentially. So you can take it out, let it stretch out. Just try to have fun with it. It feels like being a kid playing with slime, you know? It's a lot of fun. Okay, so just give it a little bit of work. You'll feel it start to firm up as you're doing the stretch and folds. And then tuck it back into a little ball nice and neat. Okay. This is what it should look like when you are done with your first stretch and fold. We're going to come back in another 30 minutes for our second stretch and fold. All right, it is time for stretch and fold number 2. This is what it looks like right now. So with this batch, we are actually going to bulk ferment this overnight. Okay, and then we're going to form a nice, neat little ball again. And we are going to do that 1 or 2 more times. This looks like it might only need 1 more time. So I'm just going to roll it back up nice and neat. Put it back where it belongs. And we're gonna let it go for another 30 minutes. All right, it has been 30 minutes. This is going to be our last stretch and fold. You might need to do it a 4th time. I usually find that 3 is a good number. This is what we look like now. We're just going to keep the dough like this. Cover it up with either some plastic wrap or foil, whatever you have on hand. Plastic wrap would probably work better, but all I have today is foil, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to cover the bowl and stick the entire thing in the fridge. And let's see, right now it is 2 o'clock, and I will bake these tomorrow morning. So we'll just stick this in the fridge. Bake them in the morning. Makes a more sour tasting sourdough. So I find if I bake them the same day, you don't get that really strong sour sourdough flavor. But if you bulk ferment in the fridge overnight, you get more of that sourdough classic taste. So whichever method you prefer, you can play with them and figure out what works best for you. But for now, it's going in the fridge. Good morning. We have done our bulk ferment overnight, and now it is time to get them set up in the loaf pan. Okay, so I have already greased 2 loaf pans with avocado oil. Yesterday I used parchment paper and it ended up being a sticky nightmare. So I am just going to put flour directly on the counter today. And we'll just worry about the cleanup when we're done. Got no problem making some messes. Okay. So it has been bulk fermented overnight, and this is what we look like today. Like I was mentioning yesterday, this is how you're going to get that classic sourdough taste in your sourdough. That bulk ferment overnight really helps that flavor set in. Create 2 even sections. We're just working on a regular old sourdough loaf. So no fancy inclusions or anything, but we can definitely make some videos about all the fun and different flavors that you can do with sourdough. Had a little technical difficulties there for a minute. Okay, so I've got my rectangle laid out here. And I am just going to cut that bad boy right in half. There we go. Now we have 2 different sections. I like to flatten them out quite a bit, and then roll them up to a loaf. Roll. Okay, and then we have our bread log here, and we're just going to pinch the ends together into this nice little seam at the bottom. Sometimes the dough can actually really be easier to work with when you bulk ferment in the fridge overnight versus doing a same-day bake. Okay, that's almost there. cover this up, and we're gonna leave it out for a little while. I'm gonna go ahead and preheat the oven to 475. We're gonna bake it for 10 minutes, drop the temperature to 450, bake for another 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll see you in the next step. All right, we have preheated the oven to 475, and now we're just going to score these before we put them in the oven. Most people have a blade. I never got one, so I kind of just use a really sharp knife. It doesn't have to be pretty. You just kind of make a line down the side, kind of just like this. Slit it. We're going to go ahead and throw this in the oven for 10 minutes at 475, and then 20 to 30 minutes at 450. It's been about 30 minutes, and this is what we're working with. Okay, so we're gonna give this a little bit to cool down before we remove them from the loaf pans. Then we're gonna let it cool completely before you cut into it and enjoy.